Let's talk about what to do when your students don't understand you, because there is literally nothing worse than seeing that blank stare of faces staring back at you because they don't understand. Hi, my name is Megan, and I have been an ESL teacher in Southern China for the past 10 years. And actually, I was just thinking this. I just threw on this shirt. It's me. Hi. I'm the problem, it's me. But I realized it kind of connects to the topic today because, hot take, if your students don't understand you, maybe you're the problem. So today I want to share a couple of tips for things that you can do if your students aren't understanding you in your ESL classes. To be honest, these things are actually more of habits. At least that's how I think about them today, because these are things that I've gotten into the habit of doing. And in doing so, I basically avoid that confusion or those problems where I give instructions or I explain something and students don't understand. So here's how to avoid having a whole class of faces stare back at you blankly because they don't understand what you were talking about. So first, when students don't understand you, the first thing that I do is I just repeat myself. Now, some of these are gonna sound very simple, like repeating yourself. But a common mistake I made when I first started teaching ESL is that I would try to repeat myself in a new way. Perhaps the students didn't understand some vocabulary in the instruction I just said, so let me change the phrasing for them to better help them understand. Logically, it sounds okay, but actually it doesn't work that well. So the best thing to do is to just repeat yourself exactly, because maybe the students didn't understand you. Yes, that's always a possibility. But what's more likely is that the students just weren't paying that close attention, or they didn't catch everything you said. For example, if you want the students to make a conversation with their partner about ordering food at a restaurant, and after you say that phrase, students don't understand, don't reword the instructions to say, oh, discuss with your partner about what you want to order at a restaurant. Instead, just repeat the exact same wording. If students are still confused, then perhaps you can restructure the vocabulary or the grammar to help them better understand. But more often than not, just repeating the exact phrase will help everybody get on board with what you want to do. The second thing you can do is remember to really keep your instructions simple. And by that, I mean use as few words as possible. Especially my first year of teaching, I really wanted to explain a lot. I over-explained, and I think a part of that was just because I was nervous. Dead space felt scary to me. I felt like if I wasn't talking, maybe nothing was going to happen. But when you're giving instructions or explaining things, try to just keep it as simple as possible. So the example I just shared is actually not the best example. I said something like, make a conversation with your partner about ordering food at a restaurant. That's way too wordy. Instead, simplify the vocabulary and simplify the instruction to make it so much clearer for your students. Another thing you can do is be sure to maintain eye contact with your students while you're talking, explaining, and giving instructions. If you're paying attention to the students, it'll be pretty easy to find out from their reactions or their facial expressions if they're understanding you or not, or what specific thing they are having problems with. If you notice that a couple of students furrow their brows while you're talking at a specific word, maybe it's that they don't understand that vocabulary. If they glance to their partner after you finished the instructions, maybe that's a clue that they didn't really understand and you should repeat your instructions again, or maybe again, so that way everyone is sure of what is going on. Another rule that I have that is a non-negotiable for me is to put all instructions into writing. So if you don't have a computer or a PowerPoint, then write it on the whiteboard or on the blackboard. If you have a PowerPoint, put all of the instructions in writing. That means that students are not fully reliant on you to understand what they should be doing. If they missed a word or they couldn't catch what you were saying, they can very easily look at the chalkboard or look at the PPT to understand what the task is. I don't put everything I say onto the PowerPoint because that's crazy, but every instruction when it comes to what the students should be doing is written clearly in simple vocabulary on the PowerPoint. I don't rely on students to understand if I said open to page 13 or open to page 30. Instead, I just write it on the PowerPoint, and it's okay if they didn't catch if I said 13 or 30, they can double check it at the PowerPoint. This is also super helpful for students who were a little bit distracted, or maybe they had to go to the bathroom, or maybe they came to class late, because I am not responsible for going up to that student and re-explaining what we're doing. If it's on the PowerPoint and a student comes in a little bit late or comes back from the bathroom, they're able to quickly check the screen to know what they're supposed to be doing, and they can jump in without missing a beat. Another really simple one is just use body language. This is so useful when I'm teaching very low level courses and I say open your book, I will make this motion, or I will hold up my book. Something I really like to do as well is model what I'm doing. So for example, if I say open your book to page 45, I grab my own copy of the textbook and I flip it open to page 45 and I show the students what page 45 looks like. It's just an easy way to model what's happening, and they can double check if they got the right number as well when they see, it's a picture of a national park and they realize that their textbook looks exactly the same. But don't underestimate body language for just helping students to understand a little bit more. Of course, this is a really simple one, but it's become such a habit for me that I don't really think about it too much. If I'm talking about two opposite things, I'm constantly gesturing to one side, to another side. If I say that one person will be the boss and one person will be the employee, I use my body to separate those two different types. So a simple tip, but it's really effective. It works great. And it's really good if you can have this be part of your habit so you don't even have to think about it. Okay, so far we've had a couple of really simple tips. If you repeat yourself exactly. Make sure you're keeping your instructions simple by using as few words as possible. Maintain eye contact with students so you can see how much they're understanding. Put all instructions into writing and don't forget to use body language. Let me share the next 5 tips for you. These are a little bit deeper and these are a little bit more focused on what you are doing well. So something you can do is you can check your own vocabulary. Make sure that you are keeping your vocabulary words simple. Now, we already talked about using as few words as possible. Let's take that a step further and make sure you are using the right vocabulary words so that students can understand. Replace simple adjectives, replace verbs, replace descriptions. Think about what your students already know. If you're asking students to make a conversation about going to a trendy restaurant and ordering from the new seasonal menu, just make sure that your students are going to be able to understand those words. Do they know the word trendy? Do they know order from? Do they know menu? Do they know seasonal? Understanding what vocabulary words your students are familiar with will really make sure you can make your instructions clear. Of course, you can always add in words that you want to teach them, but during the instructions, try not to do that. Try to keep it as simple as possible. Also, be aware of what cultural vocabulary or grammar differences might be present in the country you're teaching at compared to your home country. For example, when I first came to China and we talked about food, I used the word cafeteria. So I asked students to create a dialogue about choosing what to eat at a cafeteria, and everyone was confused. Because in China, they had been taught the word canteen instead of cafeteria. And that's just something I wasn't aware of. I wasn't aware that they had only been taught canteen and they had never heard cafeteria before. So as you start to teach more and more, you also might find that there are some cultural differences as well. But overall, make sure, especially in your instructions, that you're using the vocabulary words they are familiar with. You're not packing the instructions with brand new vocabulary words. You can use those at other times, but make the instructions as clear as possible. You want to make sure that everyone has equal access to the activity that you're going to be doing. Another thing that you can do that has become a big habit for me is asking for clarification on vocabulary words. Now, one reason for this is just to make sure the students know what that word is. For example, if you ask them to make a conversation ordering from a menu, and you're not sure if they remember the word menu or if they've been taught the word menu, just ask. Just ask, what is a menu? What does menu mean? Really quickly, just take a second or two to clarify that they understand the instructions. Another reason I really like to do this is because it helps everyone get a little bit focused and make sure that they're staying with me, nobody is distracted, they're answering my questions. If I ask, what is a menu? And they hesitate, then one, they either are not familiar with this word or they forgot the word, or two, they haven't been paying attention. Kind of carrying on the idea of making sure they know the vocabulary is making sure they have the foundational information they need to complete the task. If you're asking your students to make a conversation about ordering food at a restaurant, and you haven't supplied them with phrases that a waiter would say, then that's a problem. Maybe they're familiar with all the food vocabulary, but when it comes to starting the conversation and starting the dialogue, they're not sure what the waiter says to the customer or what the customer says to the waiter. So making sure that students have been taught phrases that they can use during the conversation or giving them a basic structure on the PowerPoint that they can follow will be really helpful as well. This was a mistake that I made often in my early career because I just wasn't thinking about it. I wasn't thinking about the fact that the students felt confident with the food vocabulary, but they weren't sure how the system worked and what phrases they should use when they were ordering in English. Two more things you can do is after you've given all the instructions and you've set the students off to work, if you're noticing that they're still a little bit hesitant, maybe they're not jumping into it immediately, calm down. Maybe they understand, maybe they're just thinking through the tasks. So what I like to do is I like to walk around and observe and also ask some individual questions. So as I'm walking around, I'm listening, I'm seeing how quickly they're jumping into the task. I'm seeing if they're asking their partners questions. I'm seeing if they're flipping back in their books to check vocabulary words. And then I will also ask individual students as well. I'll ask you, do you have any questions? Do you know what you're going to say to each other? And by doing that, sometimes I find out things that I didn't know from using all of the other techniques. Sometimes I find out that students didn't actually know this vocabulary word that I was sure that they knew. Or I find out that a lot of students are confused about one small part in the instructions, and then I can just go back to the front of the room and make a really quick announcement to make sure everybody is on the same page, or I can just individually talk with those students to make sure they know what they are doing. Another thing you can do is you can ask questions to check their understanding before they work by themselves, But when you ask those questions, avoid yes and no questions. And this is a mistake that not only I have done, but I have also seen plenty of other teachers do too. They'll ask a question like, do you understand? And that can be an okay question when you're talking individually one-on-one, but when you're asking an entire class, do you understand? Most of the time, in my experience, students will say, yeah, okay, we're fine, because they either don't want to feel embarrassed about the fact that they don't understand, or they don't want to do extra work. So instead of asking questions that can be easily answered with a yes or no, ask for clarifying questions that make students report back to you that they understand what's happening. So ask questions like, how many words are you going to write down? And they can answer that we are going to write down 5 words. How long are you going to talk to your partner? Asking these type of questions can really help you check the student's understanding rather than just having students say, yeah, we understand, when they definitely don't. Now, some of these were simple and some of these were a little bit more complex, but like I said, these all have become habits for me. These are things that I do almost without thinking because it's something that I've just implemented again and again and again. And to be honest, after 10 years of teaching, it almost never happens that my students look at me with that blank expression because they don't understand. All of these tips have really helped me streamline the process to avoid those moments of confusion and avoid this misunderstanding. So hopefully you can take these tips and apply them to your own classrooms. If this is your first year of teaching, use these, make them become habits. If it's not your first year of teaching, maybe there's a new tip or two that would help you improve your classes to make them even better. If you want more tips and resources and ideas, you can check out the website at atleasteaching.com. You can also come back here for weekly videos. That's all for today. I'll see you next time. Bye.